we've got a great session. I'm going to let our moderator introduce all of the speakers here, but I do want to play a little bit of a hype man for the moderator himself. So David DiMolfetta, cybersecurity reporter, NextGov, spent, after getting his master's at Georgetown, a stint at the Washington Post. He won a 2025 National Security Fellowship from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. If anyone wants to send him a hot tip, his signal is DJD.99. This guy breaks more stories than Stephen King. Let's give it up for David DiMolfetta, everybody.
George, thank you so much for that. That was extraordinarily kind of you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope lunch didn't make you all too tired. My name is David DiMolfetta. I cover cybersecurity and intelligence policy at NextGov FCW, which is the government tech policy unit of GITEC from ATARC, and it's great to be here with you all. They treat you well here. This is a great panel, and we have some virtual guests up here as well. Can the virtual guests hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys, and thanks for being here, and thank you to David as well. Zero Trust is interesting because no matter what happens in any administration, there's always going to be talk about Zero Trust and Zero Trust architecture, and I know that's something that really excites all of you, and only you guys and nobody else, because when I go on dates and talk about Zero Trust, like, it's really confusing. I'll leave you guys your own time to read about our distinguished guests up here, but I want to get into the 4 pillars of Zero Trust architecture. How does it work in the federal cyber landscape? I'm happy to start with whoever, but I know everyone here is coming from a different background, so I think it'd be really great for our audience here to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. So it's really the, never trust, always verify. Really for us, and we have a specific cloud environment we built from the ground up called Cosmos. It's a cloud native access point that is approved for DoD data up to impact level 5. And the way we achieve that is through microsegmentation and just having 100% visibility into all aspects of our environment. So we're using a product called Wiz. It's like a cloud native application protection platform. But what it's doing is just scanning 100% of the environment, giving us complete visibility into everything. And then we have a Zero Trust platform called Netscope that allows us to leverage a centralized identity, verify every session, every device, and really understand what's entering our environment. And we really, at all times, really expect that a breach either has happened or will happen at any given time. So we have every one of our customers isolated into their own AWS accounts, and we're doing break and inspect on both, north, south, so inbound, outbound, but also east, west, so everything internal. So we have shared internal services. We're doing break and inspect to make sure we understand that traffic, we authenticate that traffic. Really, all aspects of our environment, we make sure we understand who's entering, what the identity is, what the device is, what they're accessing, if they have permissions to access that, and a lot more. But really, the main thing is just never trust, always verify, and have the ability to have complete visibility into your entire environment.
Thank you. Sean, can we pivot over to you?
Sure. We also cover the technical sides, but I'll add something new that we also look at how can we add to the cultural pieces of this to work on the human elements. So we embed industry partners and leaders into our application development teams. We're doing a cloud platform where we host business systems for Space Force. And so as those application development teams come in and build, we're trying to work with them to develop those security mindsets and security awareness pieces so that we're covering the policy and the administrative controls as well as the technical. Same as Henry, we're doing a lot of those technical pieces as well, but there's also the human element that gets added in here as well.
Correct David on screen. Apologies, I read the other one too fast before. David. David?
So you calling on me next?
Yes.
Again, okay, you guys can hear me. So I guess the ducktail on that, along with the never trust, always verify type of piece, you want to design the system in such a way that's going to give you complete awareness in your environment, kind of like the gentleman describing how Cosmos is set up. But we also want to be able to exercise total control. So as we go through the normal authentication and authorization, we want to verify the person's identity, but we also want to be able to validate the operations they're taking in the environment and using microsegmentation to be able to provide them a very strict view of only those things that they're authorized to use. And as they use those systems, we want to have a process of continuous monitoring and validation of those. So we have situational awareness. So we understand where we need to apply continuous control in the environment to overturn someone's access when they become too high of a risk. So we want to have that complete gambit of not just not trusting or always verifying, but we also want to validate those operations and exercise awareness and complete control of the environment. So when we need to maneuver the environment to remove folks from the technical baseline, from the resources, we have that type of control in place. And by looking at your technical baseline and implementing microsegmentation, as they've done in the Cosmos technical baseline, that's really what I would want to see in each implementation of Zero Trust. So not only do you have the continuous monitoring, the continuous awareness, continuous control, but you're also setting up the system that you're preserving those resources for those people who are authorized to use them, and such that you're preserving cloud resources, that compute, memory, storage, network IO for authorized users, so you can actually conserve money. So there's a lot more benefit to implementing Zero Trust in and above the cybersecurity aspects. Over.
Terrific, thank you. Maybe we get over to the more defensive side. Rudy, anything you want to add there?
Well, yeah, so I work for USDA and we have about 100,000 employees. All those remote workers, I should state workers out in the field, state offices, county offices. We have inspectors at butcheries and so forth. So they're all utilizing different platforms and different tools, Internet of Things. So we have a really considerable security vulnerability platform and a environment where we're really careful about how that data is protected, how it's uploaded. And so we have an in-house ICAMS application that we developed about, I think it was 20 years ago. That's kind of Mike does a lot of the microsegmentation, does a lot of the access management. So we have a very thorough understanding of who's got what tool, who's using what application, what platform, tablets, laptops, cell phones. And then so we also have the issues of getting that data to our in-house stores, our data lakes, our warehouses. So the challenge we have is securing that data. So once we have the data, we're building applications now, and we're trying to build, instead of building one-offs to access that important data, we're trying to develop common applications amongst the 7 agencies so that we can access the data. So quite a big threat exposure there. We do use vendors as well. We do our security scans, on almost a daily basis. I'm getting reports on that as well. So we rely a lot on vendors to bring us the expertise because we just don't have the manpower. And, in conjunction, we're developing protocols and applications with them. So they bring the best to market for us, so we don't have to do it ourselves.
Anything you want to tack on there?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Just to let you know, I am supporting the USCIS and their Zero Trust Integration Services effort. And for us, Zero Trust means least privilege access. And that means granting only the necessary permissions to only the data assets for the length of time that the individuals will need access to those. That's very important for us. We work with a lot of immigration services, and a lot of that is PII, PFI, PHI. So one of the things we're moving away from is that perimeter network-based security and into more of the ABAC, CBAC type of thing, where we're looking at the attributes of the individuals who are trying to access the data and then tailoring that access control to those context cues that are getting fed from the policy engines. And basically, we are enhancing those enforcement points so that only the right people.
Thank you. So we all know what zero trust is now, right? Right, guys? Don't all say yes at once. Okay. This next question is about legacy systems and embedding zero trust principles and concepts on top of legacy systems. I'm sure that's something plenty of us in here can relate to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo!
Guys, we just ate lunch.
Yeah.
Let's go in reverse order, Jeff. Talk about legacy systems. How do you
Okay.
deal with challenges there in a zero trust environment?
Yeah, so legacy systems are a unique, or it can be a unique challenge because generally speaking, your legacy system is there because it's been there for a long time. And people are used to how it functions. They're used to the output that comes out of it. They're used to the input that goes into it, right? So instead of trying to, eat the whole elephant at one sitting, use a phased-in approach and bring some zero trust framework aspects into the legacy system or on top of the legacy system. So complement the security of the legacy system. And one of the easiest ways to do that is simply to implement an API on the front end. That API then can establish the business rules for access to that legacy system, constraining the access to the legacy system, and that you can use the existing ICANN that you've already got in place and use that as your policy engine to limit that gateway, to limit entrance into the aspects that you don't want to. So really what you're doing is you're moving away from that network and you're moving more to an identity-centric security framework. And that's exactly the backbone.
You want to go next on?
Yeah, sure. So at USDA, we have a lot of legacy systems, right? A lot of data stores that are powered by Oracle or some of the more legacy databases. And so what I'm finding is that OCIO is requiring that any of these applications have multi-factor authentication now, because some of them don't. They may sit behind the firewall and everybody assumes, great, it's behind the firewall, so it's secure. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. You can have hacks or whatever, security breaches. So what I'm finding is that we're being required to create multi-factor authentication, which everybody understands what that means. I mean, people a couple times to get in, or maybe there's a seamless application where you put your credentials one time and it'll allow you to get in again. But what I'm having a problem with is getting funding to do that. We've lost some contract support staff. Funding is tight. So, we're having to shut down applications that are critical to farmers, ranchers, and producers out there. So, I'm fighting for those dollars now to try and continue these applications. They're so critical. They're really important, right? Some of these are powering like the avian flu teams that are going out and inspecting the hatcheries and the facilities where, chickens are raised. So, people don't seem to understand how important USDA is in terms of feeding not only the US, but the world, right? And behind that lays a lot of zero trust principles. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. David, up on screen, anything you want to add there on the challenges with legacy systems?
Yeah, the challenge with legacy systems, as you audit your technical baseline, looking at those things that you want to protect, you're going to find these legacy systems. And depending on what that legacy system is, to the gentleman's point, you want to place or implement a policy enforcement point as close to as possible, if not integrate using an API into the system as much as possible. So you may have a legacy mainframe system that you may be able to code something rudimentary that would be able to open and read and attribute-based access policy, or even take the instruction of permit and deny for users, as Jim said, business rules. But you may have something that's a discrete device, firmware only, depending on what it is. Maybe it's a telco type of a device. You can still implement a physical policy enforcement point right in front of it, something that's identity aware, something that's going to be able to look at an authentication token as a service provider integrated with your IDP or your identity provider, to be able to look at the attributes, be able to look at the entitlements for a user, to compare them with the criteria for access into that legacy system. And because these legacy systems probably are prone with many different vulnerabilities that maybe can't be patched or very difficult to be patched, some companies for some of these systems may not exist anymore. But it's a critical piece to the infrastructure. We realize that, so we can surround it with defensive technologies like policy enforcement points from the NIST 800-207, that logical component, to provide it some protections and validation. And so when people are getting into that legacy device, really want to look at the aspects of that legacy device. Are there any pieces of visibility data points that we can get from it? Is there an ability to look at the processes are running? Can we see if a process gets spawned in the device that's a rogue process, different variations on the way it performs? That may be a pre-incident indicator that there is something going on with that device and it's been taking over, or some risk involved with that. So not only do we want to put the policy enforcement point in place, such as an API call, but we also want to see what kind of visibility data points we can pull into our analytics, so in our SIEM tool, to be able to determine whether or not there's a threat. Over.
Great, thank you. Sean, anything on the Space Force perspective you wanted to add here?
Actually, I'll go back to my experiences at Kessel Run. When I was there, we were just starting to look at how to bring in some legacy systems that at the time we had been operating completely in the cloud, and we did have some on-prem stuff that was more traditional networks, but for the most part, it was a bunch of cloud engineers who had a bunch of on-prem engineers coming in and saying, we need these things, and the cloud engineers were saying, we can't do that. Like that's not the way this works. We struggled a lot with, hey, we want an API to talk to this service running here, or we want you to secure this in this way. And we didn't have a fundamental understanding of how that legacy system really integrated with the rest of the ecosystem, or what the technical capabilities of that legacy system were to be able to communicate with ours. So I think one of the strategies that we could have done a lot better was building out a tool set for those legacy operators and developers to come in and implement their systems in ours. And that would have been better facilitation of those API connections, or how they could plug into that, better understanding of what needed to be monitored or how their systems might operate as a baseline. We were honestly completely caught off guard by that. And now, from the Space Force perspective, as we start migrating some of our systems from Air Force to Space Force, we're actually tackling a lot of those better, because we are considering some of those, hey, the system just may not work in this way. So what are things that we can do better to communicate with these stakeholders and with the systems that they have to connect with to try and cut these off before they become problems? The microsegmentation really kills us in this, because we can't always bridge the way that they need to be bridged and still maintain the security that we're trying to, or the security posture that we're trying to maintain. Over.
Thank you, Henry. Anything to add there, last but not least?
Yeah, definitely. So currently, we actually built our entire environment as a greenfield effort, because our previous environment did have a lot of challenges trying to implement Zero Trust. So we built Cosmos from the ground up, with the plan of trying to enable 100% of the controls, or as close as possible. But what we've done in our legacy environment, we've actually taken some of the lessons learned and some of the low-hanging fruit and started implementing things like centralized identity, some of the comply to connect requirements, just really taking baby steps on the other legacy environment to help at least improve the security posture. May not be able to get 100% there, but it'll help us help that legacy system get up and running. But in our Cosmos environment, we're actually running into various problems supporting legacy applications. So it is a combination of tuning your policies and understanding their use cases. So typically they want external network connectivity, like via a service account, or they want additional access just to a wide open network. So for us, it's looking at alternate controls and figuring out how we can meet them halfway and get them partially compliant with the zero trust architecture while they mature their systems, provide them sandbox environments so they could really test out new capabilities as well to hopefully modernize their applications, and just constantly evolving and learning as we go. Just because it is a pretty unique challenge to try to get, especially in the Navy, some of these shipboard type networks up and to a modern state of zero trust.
Thank you. I do have some additional questions. I do want to pause if anyone in the audience had some Q&A and they wanted to build those here. Come on, guys. Zero trust.
It's not as glamorous
It's not
as
as-
AI,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
AI But AI's, in conjunction with zero trust is really, it's a big thing. Right?
Yeah.
We're leveraging it now, so.
We were
Well,
trying to.
talk about that then, because that does come together in many different forums that I have participated in, that you'll have a group talking about agentic AI, and they're pretty much saying the same thing that's going on in the zero trust community conversation, but they're not crossing over. So where you're at USDA, how are you enabling that conversation to come together in your shop to leverage it best?
Well, from our standpoint, so that's a really good point. At the network level, where we're doing the scans, we're doing like weekly scans or daily scans or whatever of the whole network, the entire ecosystem, which is, as I mentioned, pretty massive. So we're trying to see about leveraging AI to develop patterns, to analyze patterns, to quickly understand where breaches might be or where vulnerabilities are, and then spit out reports that can help the SOC or the security people address those in a pretty quick fashion. So that's really where my purview is. Now, I'm not really so much involved with some of the agencies like food safety or animal plant health inspection, where they're going to use AI. There are several use cases where they're using AI now to identify issues with regard to crop plantings and all kinds of esoteric things that would take forever for a particular analyst to do. So, but from that standpoint, yes, zero trust is key because it's security on the network, and it's going to definitely save a lot of time and money, right? If we spend the money on agentic or any of the other tools that are coming to the fore.
So that's what I would like to follow up on, because I think it's, by the way, I have to tip my hat to USDA. Going back to my time in government, you guys were applying AI while everybody else was just speaking about it. But let's go back. So agentic AI, as more and more agents enter into the environment that are not human beings, and then applying that zero trust to those agents and the whole panel, how are you approaching that?
I mean, I'll get two guys up on screen here. David, I know you had your hand up first if you want to chime in.
Yeah, so thanks so much. So when it comes to an agentic threat detection framework, as I would term it, really what we're trying to do is meet the user and entity behavioral analytics requirements for target and advanced level zero trust that were defined by the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office. So we have 4 basic detection agents that we want to put forward, and they all use the same methodology, very simple forward feed artificial neural networks that use a sigmoid function to provide a probability on the output. The input feeds into these agentic agents really are meant to think of one thought. And so we want to look at those types of questions that really conclude an answer to one determination. So we have the four basic agentic agents that we're proposing are determination, really to determine, is the user on the system a good citizen? Another one is, are they breaking rules in respect to the attribute-based access control policies that we have in place? Is this person an adversarial threat? Do we think they're doing anything as far as living off the land attacks? Do they exhibit any kind of rootkits or something about their system that could be a threat to the environment or to the data that we have protected? The last one is an advanced persistent threat, fingerprinting. So as you look at those four, those are the basic ones that I would recommend having up all the time as part of the framework. And this would be in parallel with your SIEM tools that you would have. So I really look at the SIEM tools that are running artificial intelligence as maybe a monolithic type of brain that's looking and threat hunting through the data. These other ones are really focused, easy to understand. So when I put something like this in a security operations center, and I may have a new SOC member coming in day one, what I want to do is imbue them with the experience of somebody that would have maybe 10 years of capability being in the SOC. Now, when it comes to the technical baseline and we want to audit that technical baseline, we want to understand what's in that technical baseline that is susceptible to a vulnerability that an adversary has exhibited in the past. So no surprise, we're going to go to MITRE ATT&CK and then look at the technical baselines, technology that they're employing, and seeing what kind of attack that could actually occur in their environment. So one of the examples that I like to use is out of the lateral movement pillar for MITRE ATT&CK and looking at session hijacking. So a lot of folks and a lot of technical baselines use RDP. In that RDP line of attack, there are stipulated detections that could be used. So if I take those detections and other things that are unique about that technical baseline, I can create a new angenic agent that I can bring on board that is specific to detecting an RDP hijack event in the environment based on a probability. And it's very simple because each agent answers one question and that's it. And so if I have a technical baseline that doesn't use RDP, then they don't need that agent. So you can create specific user entity behavioral analytic detections based on the technology you have employed in your technical baseline. I hope that makes sense. If not, we can discuss offline at another time. Over.
Thank you. Henry, I know you had your hand up as well if you wanted to.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we are also implementing user entity behavior analytics. So it is a constant tuning effort to ensure we understand not only our environment, but the insider threat. And in our environment, we actually give each user a score based upon what was triggered, what they accessed, what type of data they accessed. And then over time, we actually are building out data loss prevention policies as well. So it's a combination of just enumerating all your data. So you know where like, your health information is, your PII is, any sensitive data. And then you can create specific rules to only allow them to, upload to .mil systems or authorized systems, but you have additional scores that get deducted from those type of scores. So he already hit on that very, very well. But another use case we're using it for, we have the ability to show auto remediation. So you can get not only specific instructions generated by AI, but it gives you, here's the commands to run. This is how you remediate this particular vulnerability. Or you could actually implement, we haven't yet because it's an RDT environment, it might break test systems. But you could auto remediate those particular findings via API. And then another use case we're using it for is we're automating our authorization documentation, trying to automate like policy documents from sensor data. So you take all of this vulnerability data, all the passing controls, all your NIST controls that passed, and then you populate like a web form that has like an access control policy that actually shows you what you're doing and where you're compliant, where you're non-compliant. So those are the areas where we're trying to leverage AI the best we can.
John, thank you. I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, so when our developers are pushing things out to production, those end up being endpoints running in our environment. And So we're looking at ways that we can actually integrate AI into our software assessment pipelines to help us to identify additional vulnerabilities. So this is both like SAST and DAST solutions, static and dynamic application testing, as well as container scanning. It's kind of a different aspect of zero trust, but this is to make sure that we're not introducing vulnerabilities into these endpoints that we're spinning up. And sometimes there can be quite a few of these, so it gets significantly more difficult for us to monitor, which we're looking at using AI for those as well. But that gets more into like the SIM operations that were mentioned earlier. Another way that we're using it, which is really getting away from zero trust, we're using it to translate some of the more complex security concepts into more lay terminology so that we can communicate those risks better either to upper stakeholders or to application developers who don't necessarily want to spend cycles learning cybersecurity. They want to spend time writing code. So not really a zero trust concept, but more of just an interesting way that we're looking at using AI to support some of our security programs. Over.
That was a great question. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Come on, guys. It's not that boring.
All right, I guess.
David, I'll throw in,
Yeah.
since you asked. This is actually for David in the Navy, David versus David not in the Navy. When you talk about the threat detection and are these for agentic AI, are they currently in use? Are they being tested? Can you talk, are they just a big thinker? Where are you in that process? How are you testing them? Give any more you can tell us about it in terms of how you're moving them?
Yeah, so we have a pilot upcoming. I have a candidate vendor that's able to do the work. And we have a candidate location in which we're going to do the work, and it is going to be sponsored through the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office. It is development work, but my understanding is that the agentic agents are very easy. And so when you're looking at the different data feeds that are provided by MITRE ATT&CK, to the other gentleman's point, there are mitigations that are also provided. And so when we put those agents through the testing event, what we'll do is we'll start out with the first 4, but then we're going to bring in different MITRE ATT&CK generated agents that are able to do specific detections. So I guess the bottom question, to answer the previous gentleman's question, we're using AI for detection, for threats. But to Henry's point, there is capability based on the probability output to tie that to automation, such as an Ansible script. Maybe it sends an email to the SOC. Maybe it actually deploys a countermeasure, logs somebody off, depending on what the perceived threat is in the environment. But we have an upcoming pilot. I'm looking for funding, but I do have the right people in the right place at the right time that have a current contract in the environment in order to do the work. So quite honestly, it's still in development, so it's not something we're fielding today. But to be specific, I am part of the Department of Navy, working for Don CIO. And so I believe Henry is at NIWC PAC. So a little bit of differentiation on our echelon levels. But at my level, we're doing more developed strategic work. Henry's doing hit the hammer, actual implementation work. Do I have that correct, Henry? Over.
Yes, actually, we follow all David's policies. So he comes out with the guidance for zero trust. We do our best to implement those controls. And then we look at different commercial tools. First, we look at COT solutions typically to leverage those, just to not reinvent the wheel. And then if needed, we create our own custom add-ons to that capability.
I have a different question for you, and it goes back a few years of something that was started over at DISA, and they were in a zero trust effort looking at applying blockchain. and I don't know where that went to eventually, but amongst this larger panel of knowledgeable people, have you looked at using the use of blockchain to enhance the achievement of your objectives? Over.
I see David with his hand up.
Yeah, so from my standpoint, what I would like to use is blockchain, and for generic terms, an immutable ledger. And so what I would like to do is use it for configuration management. So in the technical baseline, as we have a baseline as tested, as deployed, I want to do a system verification operational test, and the results of that test with the configuration becoming the Genesis block for that blockchain. And any authorized change to that technical baseline must be written in a subsequent block in that chain. So I could have a distributed process that may be running at a couple of different cybersecurity service providers, along with the local technical baseline, that agree on what that baseline should look like. So as you guys may know, as configured, we're probably pretty secure with some technical baseline that we have implemented. But when an adversary tries to get into the environment, they get a toehold, they try to laterally move, and they know that there's some vulnerability that they want to get at, but they can't get to it. So they're going to make a configuration change in order to try to expose that vulnerability so they can advance more persistence, more control in the environment in hopes of taking it over. So if I use an immutable ledger with some kind of network warden, if you will, another piece of AI that's comparing that blockchain configuration based on and against the actual running configuration, and anytime it sees something that's not the same, to revert it back, apply that mitigation, send an alert that there was a configuration that was found in the device or software that was out of configuration, and we moved it back. And if there's a persistent change in that configuration, we'll have to do more in-depth investigation. So the blockchain, in my mind, is not one that's a proof of work. It's actually a proof of authorization with two-person integrity. So if I make a change, an authorized change as a technician, I would still need a second party supervisor to validate who also has authorization to make that change, to actually write a new configuration block to that technical baseline blockchain, if you will. So that's what I have proposed in the Don CIO Zero Trust Blueprint that's in draft. We're looking at pushing that out in the May timeframe, and that would be a piece of software that would be in development. We do have a candidate vendor that can do the software development that's already adept at providing blockchain type technologies. And I have mentioned to them many times the desire to move forward with blockchain for configuration management. It's just a matter of getting it funded and doing some pilots, and hopefully a pilot to production. Over.
I've got a follow-up to that. So are you part of the CIO Council? In other words, is there a broader effort amongst government for blockchain and crypto? Because honestly, at this point, there are so many vulnerabilities, so many bad actors out there. It's not a generally accepted, it's too risky at this point to really be putting secure data and information out there. Notwithstanding the fact that it's protected because you have a record of every footprint of every activity, I just don't think the maturity level's there. So I'd be curious to see your documentation when it comes out. And if you could give us some information on where and when that will be released. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Right now it's still in the proposal phase, but I think there's sound, I guess, reasoning that this will work based on how blockchain has been implemented in fintech over the last few years. So I really don't see it out of scope or something that's not feasible. I think it's very reasonable to expect to be able to record configuration information on a blockchain and be able to validate that against a running config. Over.
Anything there?
No, this is a little out of my, more on the practical application of the zero trust.
All right, folks, any other questions? We have about 10-ish minutes left, and I have some other questions for the panel. Yes.
So I have this written down, going back to zero trust now. So zero trust sounds great on paper, but how do we make it work with legacy systems and modern cloud apps without slowing the users down? So I'm thinking more like the 0 hour threats are coming out all the time, the employee productivity, and then isolation. So my question, like I said, are you guys already thinking of something like that, or have you looked into something like that to help productivity keep continuing, and then also protecting the systems at the same time while applying zero trust?
So what we put out in the major design concept for Don CIO was to first audit your technical baseline, identify the things that you want to protect, map your transaction flows so you know where your users are, define the way that these users are accessing the system. Are they using tablets, cell phones, laptops, desktops? And then when we implement microsegmentation, a lot of these policy enforcement point devices you can put in pass-through mode. So it's basically looks like a network tap. It's in line in the network. It can be put up into the software stack, and then you can test out in a non-production environment the digital access policies that are going to apply the criteria for access to those environments. And so what you'll see as a user, instead of being able to log on your machine, seeing thousands of network shares, thousands of printers, thousands of different resources, you'll get down to the point where you see the printer you're authorized to use. You'll see the the network share that you're authorized to use. So you will actually start conserving network bandwidth for those people who really need to use those resources and those resources only. And so this defends us against lateral movement, but also conserves that bandwidth for authorized users only. So you don't have thousands and thousands of packets nearest the things that you want to protect. It becomes very quiescent, quiet. It allows us to detect threats with the bare minimum of resources using some of these agentic agents. And for the users, the overall quality of service and their experience should be improved. But in so much as that the visibility and analytics will also be able to detect when somebody's experience is not as intended. So we know we have an information exchange requirement that has a performance that it requires like 10 megabits. And if it falls below 10 megabits, we know the user is going to experience problems, and we can start investigating on that. So you really get down and put a microscope, not only on the security, but also the end user experience. Over.
See Sean on the screen with Paul's hand up.
Yeah, so I'll add that as we're implementing our security training program, we're trying to move away from classes and CBTs and all your traditional government training that everyone loves so much. We have a program called the Super Coders in the Space Force where we take lower ranked, and I mean that in like the lower numbers of both officers and enlisted, and teach them to code and then send them back to their units where they can solve problems with cybersecurity. And so one of the things we want to incorporate into this is making them security champions so that as we start pushing out zero trust initiatives and other security initiatives, they're already connected to us and they can bring those ideas and those concepts back to their teams. One of the problems is that we can't be everywhere, and our technical implementations also can't be everywhere, and we never know how things might change and how the landscape is going to change. So one way that we can combat that is making sure that people are aware and that they know how to communicate things that look wrong back to someone who can actually do that critical analysis. So in one way, we're trying to incorporate zero trust all the way across every department. And I mean department as in marketing and development and sales and those kinds of departments, not departments like the Department of the Air Force or the Department of the Navy. But yeah, we're trying to push these concepts out as simple topics that then these people can be interested in and take back. So rather than teaching them, This is how a skiff works and why we don't want to let somebody plug a USB drive in. We talk to them about, hey, this is why you might want to do this on your social media account, because it's way easier for me to talk to someone that's 20 about social media than it is for me to talk to them about something boring like zero trust.
You just say zero trust is boring? Because I'm offended now.
I mean, I'm here talking to you about it because my wife has told me if I talk to her about it anymore, she's going to buy the remote out of the Adam Sandler movie and start muting me. So
Very romantic, thank you. About 5 minutes left. I'm curious, one thing we focus on a lot in NextGov is the workforce aspects of cybersecurity. There was a big push for that on the White House side. Going back to the outline questions that we had prepped ahead of doing the panel, I'm curious about workforce training and how it fuels a successful zero trust environment. Obviously, as you know, we're talking a lot about AI and automated tools, but you do in fact need people to implement these things. Last time I checked and last time I asked our experts. So Jeff, I'd love to hear from you first about workforce training and zero trust.
So yeah, what we did at USCIS is we developed a survey basically, and we said, what do you know about zero trust? We broke it down by the pillars, by the system maturity model pillars, and we asked them a series of questions about how they understood the framework, how they understood how it can help them. Do they know what it is? Do they not know what it is? And how it can help overall the whole ecosystem stay secure and help the security posture. So what we're in the process of doing right now is gathering those. We sent out about 40 different people, and maybe 20 of those were subsystems. So what we're doing now is we're gathering all of the input that people put into there. And we gave them, of course, we gave them open-ended answers as well, but a lot of yes, no's and a lot of open-ended and a wish list. So what would you really like this thing to do as far as zero trust goes? So what we're doing right now is we're going to take the output, create a gap analysis, and find the aspects of the zero trust framework that are the least understood and that we had the most questions on. And we're going to write a roadmap for training people on the high impact aspects. So whatever was most misunderstood is going to bubble up to the top. And
Yeah, I mean, the user is obviously the easiest point to get into an application or to a network. So at USDA, we have kind of a two-pronged approach. One is training. So we also have an enterprise application called AgLearn, where we have AgLearn, yeah, where you'll be assigned, training sessions on, for example, zero trust principles, or safe use of networks, personal equipment, laptops, etc. Then we also have unscheduled phishing exercises where mail will be sent to you and you'll be tempted to click on it, and then they'll do analysis of how many were clicked, and then produce analytics on that. So that happens on a regular basis. People are getting wise to that now. The email systems are pretty comprehensive now, where they'll scan out almost 90% of the nefarious mails anyhow. And then what I saw last week was with the new administration, they're revisiting all of these aspects. And so we had a 2-page pop-up come up on email on our desktop, listing out all the requirements for use of personal equipment, government furnished equipment. And so that's good. I think it's a good thing to continually impress on people, that they have to be careful when they're reading personal mail or whatever on their laptops or their desktops on GFE. So, all this is reinforced and it seems to be working. We haven't had a lot of nefarious intrusions.
We get those too. We get
Yeah.
those fake emails. Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, I only fell for one of them.
Cyber reporter.
Cyber
reporter.
Cyber reporter here, guys. I don't know how they are. Anyone else on screen? We have about a minute left. Anyone else on screen here from this panel? Henry, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, in our environment, we just created some KB articles and then a 38-minute demo video that's broken up into 30 different things. that users have to do to get used to like how to actually get up and running in our environment to meet the zero trust requirements. And some of them are simple as, requesting DoD certs for their applications, as far as even how to host a private application. So we just kept ours very, very specific to our operating environment. That way, someone onboards, it's all automated. They get up and running. They watch, a less than an hour video at their own pace, and then they can, configure their tools to our requirements. Answers like our help desk tickets drop dramatically after that, just because it's a different operating environment, different requirements to operate in a zero trust environment.
It's right on time. That's all the time we have for this session. I hope we made zero trust as exciting as I think it is. Okay, guys, thanks.
This session's going to serve as a perfect bridge between zero trust and what we have coming up next, modern cyber resiliency for data. In the digital age, data is an organization's most valuable asset. Protecting it from cyber threats is paramount. Modern cyber resiliency goes beyond traditional security measures, ensuring that data remains secure, accessible, and reliable, despite all those evolving cyber threats that you just heard about. It's my esteemed privilege to welcome up to the stage Ashish Gandotra. He is CTO, Federal Civilian Solution Engineering, Government, Defense, and Intelligence over at Oracle. Sir, take it away.
Thank you very much. Today, the limited time, I'm going to talk through one topic which is critical from the most critical asset to protect, which is data. But I'm going to put a spotlight on how it can protect from ransomware threats, which we all know, which we all have been hearing any day in the news. You look at the numbers, how they are impacting the businesses and impacting the missions. The numbers are continuously increasing if you look at by 2031, that costing missions and businesses about $265 billion annually, which is a huge, humongous problem. And if the database attack, even for a few minutes, can cause a lot of revenue and reputation problem issue from any business, it can be devastating to the mission first. So my goal is today is that I can run through certain ideas and provide you highlight on one solution which protects you from all these challenges. As you can see, data management trends are changing continuously as we are moving towards cloud. Many different new traditional data models are changing. We have multiple different new models which are coming up. Requirement from transactions and velocities has been increasing. We need faster and faster IO latencies from moving from milliseconds to microseconds. With all these complexities of increased data management, it increases the cybersecurity risk, right? And we have to find out new ways to protect the data. So the whole idea, when we are looking at new ways to protect data, there are certain elements which are must to have. And one of which are out of many of these, if you look at, these are the basic tenets from when you're looking to protect the data. Data, and when I'm saying I'm putting a spotlight on piece of one protection, which is the data backup. And that particular piece has become way more critical when we are having ransomware attacks everywhere. So when you are now looking at your backup, it has to be encrypted. It has to be validated, right? The infrastructure you're using today for backup has to use hardened platform. It has to be reliably HA configured infrastructure. And from administrative perspective, there is separation of duties from a person who's managing the data and person who's managing your backups. A policy-based backup approach where we can control how the backup will be restored, controlled, managed based on a policy definition. And nobody should be able to change that policy. And from monitoring and from automatic detecting and alerting, which is more critical now, so that I can quickly understand, quickly know when something is happening with my data, and I can take an action on that. And most importantly, immutability. So which is important, that nobody should be able to change my data at every layer. So if something gets attacked on production, it should not happen that whosoever got a control of my production data gets control of my backup also. So that is completely separate and cannot be changed. So keeping these things in mind, we have come up with a strategic vision for universal Oracle data protection, right? It's not just protecting your data on your premises or hybrid. It's a data protection we are providing with recovery appliance and recovery service, which covers your data behind the firewall by providing you solutions like recovery appliance, which can cover and can also have a virtual appliance working through the recovery service, which is available to run in OCI and Oracle Cloud, as well as in other hyperscalers like Azure, AWS, or GCP. So that means that wherever you're running your data footprint, it can be protected by this particular service, this particular, and this provides you that consistent, Oracle native backup and recovery model. It gives you increment forever and end-to-end integrated automation from that perspective, and provides you unified monitoring and management experience, which are those tenants which are critical for that backup to run successfully or protect you from that. And if you look at all those, these recovery service features, which align very well with those tenants, which are required critical elements for backup to protect you from ransomware attacks, right? And if you look into that and the customer benefits from each and everything, we cover you from at every level to protect your data, so that if ever a ransomware attack happens, if ever somebody gets access to your data, you still have a copy. You can quickly come up with your environment and keep your business running, so that it doesn't get out of control of your hands. So in summary, if you look at it, number one, which gives you superior data protection value versus your standard data backups, which you are running today. The reason why it is 10x shorter backup window, 10x lower production overhead, 10x lower network utilization at 2x. Because in our backup new technology, the way what we do backup now is we do not back up ever a full database. It's always incremental. So only the changes which are going through to the backup. And the appliance and the service will build the full backup for you whenever you need, at whatever level you need. It will create that backup for you. And so that whenever you need to restore and recover, it will restore and recover at a much faster speed. And you do not have to worry about figuring out if the backup you're sending is going to work or not. That service takes care of that. It verifies the backup. It looks into that how, if the data you are sending and the transactions which are happening in production are restorable or not. So it does that, checks for you and verifies you and alerts you on that. Similarly, as we mentioned, with modern platform, which require modern data protection, from a ransomware perspective, it offers that resilient measures, which we have yet discussed. From a data security and integrity perspective, it covers all, it's critical, and it covers all the bases from that perspective to get control of your data so that nobody else can have control of that. And this is just a single layer approach, right? I'm talking about from a multi-layer approach, maximum availability, maximum security architecture. This is one of the very, very critical piece which you today need to protect your data. And I earlier mentioned, it does offer comprehensive monitoring and reporting and end-to-end encryption for that whole solution. From a data protection perspective, this is the best data protection solution from Oracle perspective. It does offer you cloud elastic service, fast backup and store throughputs, and Oracle data integrated recovery, validation, and lifecycle from that perspective. So if you look at it, it comes as a full package where it is protecting you from any ransomware threat happening all around and providing you full control from those ransomware threats. So before I end, and we are still here, but I just wanted to highlight that we are, we'll be doing a federal forum for the government customers. It's for you. So we'll be having many sessions where we are working with the customers, talking to customer. You can come out there and participate in that if possible. And session is there. So always we are happy to assist you and will be welcome to have a discussion with you. That was my quick presentation for today because of the limited time, but we are here if you want to discuss in detail what other possible options into cybersecurity and how we build that maximum security architecture to protect your data.